Hi, Miguel Kakanindin here, back with another revisit to Pokemon Adventures. Today we are doing Volume 6, I want to address real quick something that I didn't think was going to be, I thought it was in this volume, but it was actually in the previous volume. So real quick, Green actually sends out a command to Blastoise using the microphone from Let's Go Pikachu. Not Let's Go Pikachu, sorry. Hey You Pikachu, the microphone from Hey You Pikachu, which was a really not well received Nintendo 64 game, but like the attention to detail regarding the items from the games is very much a strength of Pokemon Adventures, especially for Pokemon fans. For people who are just getting into Pokemon, they might not get the reference, or people who haven't played the games, that kind of thing. But for Pokemon fans, for people who have played the games, it's a nice touch, which is something that I wanted to mention in the previous video, but I wasn't sure if it was in that volume, so I chose not to address it for the sake of safety. So I'm addressing it here. So yeah, anyway, that's out of the picture. So those of you who have been following my Naruto vlogs know that I had a bit of trouble keeping up with the Sasuke retrieval arc, especially the part where they had the 3 battles going on at the same time with the sound ninja, and because I felt like it didn't place enough focus on one particular fight to allow us to get invested into it. Because it kept jumping in between fights, unlike specific fights that are devoted to that whole volume. This is kind of similar, but here I don't feel like I feel like I'm already used to the fast-paced action of Pokemon Adventures at this point. I know that the battles generally are shorter than those in Naruto. They don't have as much emotional weight, and as such, I'm more willing to forgive it. Like, for example, the battle with Red and Blue that took up one whole one whole round. A lot of the battles, especially throughout the Red, Blue, and Green chapter, while they were very poorly paced, even the really, really well-paced ones took like at least a round. It was only the really big ones that took up multiple rounds. Like the battle at Saffron City, for instance. And this one was similar. So I'm more willing to forgive Pokemon Adventures for that because of that. And additionally, there was some emotional weight thrown in. So real quick, at the beginning of the arc, we see that Yellow, Green, Blue, Bill, and Blaine have all made their way to Sea Rise Island, which is the hideout of the Elite Four, and they're actually met by the former gym leaders, who were formerly members of Team Rocket, Lieutenant Surge, Koga, and Sabrina. And this throws in an interesting element because Sabrina's like spoons of fate or whatever, who decides like who's going to fight with whom in order to achieve the best result, actually decides that it pairs each of the trainers up with their opponent from the battle at the Silph Company headquarters. So Blue is paired with Koga, Green is paired with Sabrina, and Yellow is paired with Blaine, who she has been working with up till this point anyway. Not exactly at the Silph Company, but still a very an appropriate pairing. And Lieutenant Surge does not get paired up with Bill because their spoons just don't bend at all. Bill is hilarious in this volume, I think, because he's here with these really powerful trainers and really powerful gym leaders ready to take on the Elite Four really, really powerful trainers, and he's just so out of place. Every time there's like an ensemble shot of like all these Pokemon trainers gearing up to fight, Bill is just there. He's like, what am I even doing here? But yeah, he's hilarious. So Bill ends up going with Lieutenant Surge, and they each of the pairs ends up fighting a member of the Elite Four, save for Yellow and Blaine, and we'll get to their battle in a little bit. So first we have Blue and Koga, who meet up with Agatha, and now this is one of the things, like, I don't want to compare Pokemon Adventures too much to Naruto, but this is one of the things that makes this, the focus being placed on different parts, on different battles at the same time. This is part of the reason it works, because Blue and Koga both have, Blue, first of all, has a history with Agatha, having faced Agatha before, and being the grandson of Professor Oak, who was Agatha's rival. and Koga, well, they're both poison trainers, they're both Arbok trainers, so they get to pit Arbok versus Arbok, and that makes things interesting. But first, we do see a little bit of backstory for Agatha. We see that, first of all, she actually was the person who helped Lorelei. Lorelei felt bad for the Pokemon who were being hurt by the industrial waste, by the humanity's neglect of Pokemon in their in their hurry to invent and to industrialize and that sort of thing. So Agatha was the one who helped Lorelei out of that by helping her join the Elite Four. And we also see how Agatha and Professor Oak had began their rivalry because Oak was willing to give up his dreams of becoming really strong but he wants to. He felt that the research group that he and Agatha were a part of were very misled, and he wanted to do his own research, and he wanted to create the Pokédex, which was to compile all this information on Pokemon into this one, encyclopedia, basically. And Agatha really thought that was not going to work, and she felt that Oak was abandoning them for his own need. That really, establishes her grudge against Oak, which, interestingly enough, if I remember correctly from future chapters, the rivalry aspect of two people who have extremely different takes on them on the same matter, but at the same time they have very similar goals. It's an interesting concept that is explored in later chapters. But we see that Agatha and Oak actually battled at the Pokemon League Championship, and it took hours for them to even figure out, for Victor to rise from that, which is insane. Oak's really strong, and so is Agatha, and that kind of really establishes Agatha as that really powerful trainer, but also establishes that history, that grudge that Agatha has against Oak, and as an extension, Blue. So that makes the battle against Agatha really, really emotion-packed for Blue. And Koga, being a snake trainer, we get to see a little more of his Arbok. We saw Arbok get beheaded in the Red, Blue, and Green chapter, but his Arbok is grown back because it turns out that Arbok's pattern, each of Arbok's patterns has a different effect, and Agatha's Arbok can change its pattern at will. So Koga's Arbok has that special ability where it can regenerate its body as long as the head remains intact. So, with that said, they use that to their advantage, and some of Koga's ninja throwing stars, which have Pokeballs on them, which is an interesting concept, and I know that there are a lot of different Pokeball variations similar to that throughout the whole series. Excuse me. So it's interesting to see Koga have his own variation. We saw Yellow's fishing rod. Bruno actually has nunchucks attached to Pokeballs, which allow him to hurl out his Pokemon a lot faster. I really want to see more of those, actually. And Koga uses those to his advantage. So when Blue and he are separated, he's able to throw Blue a bit of some medicine in order to help Blue overcome a status effect that Agatha inflicts on him. So interesting teamwork by these former enemies who know each other too well at this point to and have a common enemy in Agatha in this case. Meanwhile, on the other hand, interestingly enough, Green and Sabrina have completely different ideas on how to approach battling Lorelei, because they actually, Lorelei uses this weird voodoo doll ice thing in which she basically creates ice shackles and shackles Green and Lorelei together. So that forces them to really coordinate their movements. And of course, anything that happens to that voodoo doll is going to happen to them, so they can't afford to break that voodoo doll, but they also really have to defeat Lorelei as quickly as possible. So that adds an interesting element to their dynamic. And of course, we see a little bit we flash back to a little bit of the battle between Red and Bruno here. We see that Bruno actually had intended to take on Red as a legitimate challenge, because he was very interested in finding an opponent that could actually make his heart pound, give him a good fight. And Red was one such opponent, actually. Red gave Bruno a really, really good fight. But we also see a soft side to Bruno. He actually pauses the battle in order to allow a group of Diglett to pass through. And that really shows, similar to the rest of the Elite Four, Bruno is very, very mindful about the environment, very mindful about the state of Pokemon, but he's mindful in a way that that clashes with the intention of the Elite Four, who wants to eradicate humanity for the sake of Pokemon. He believes, like, Pokemon are a beautiful thing, and it is humanity's responsibility to nurture that. But he doesn't believe in the complete eradication of humanity. And when we do see how Lorelei and Agatha basically possess Bruno into doing their bidding, we actually start feeling bad for Bruno, because he's actually very much an honorable and very sweet man. So we do see that Lorelei and Agatha had multiple intentions for luring Red into this battle. First of all, they wanted to find Giovanni for some reason. They wanted to find the Earth Badge. And I remember why they wanted the Earth Badge. It's coming up in the next volume. But I'm not going to talk about it. But it's interesting because Red, technically, yeah, he was the only one. He was the last person to have seen Giovanni. So it would make sense for them to track Red down. The second reason was, of course, they wanted Red on their side. A trainer as powerful as Red could only be be useful if he was working with the Elite Four on this one. Of course, we've seen how Red treated Giovanni when he extended his invitation for Red to become a member of Team Rocket, so Red, of course, flat out refuses. So that basically takes Lorelei and Agatha to Plan B, which is, basically just take Red out of the picture, and Lorelei actually freezes Red, which is why he's been missing all this time. He's been frozen. We know he was frozen. But we see actually Lorelei freeze Red in this one. And we find out that the super nerd, who has awoken from his coma and is no longer under the control of the Elite Four, actually found Red while he was exploring Mount Moon, and really studied him in order to, when he was under the control of the Elite Four, in order to impersonate him and lure Pika to him. So yeah, we get a lot of information about Red's Red's imprisonment in this one within the ice, and we actually do see Red return in Sea Rise Island. Of course, we see, first of all, Lieutenant Surgeon Bill go up against Bruno, and again, we see a little more of Bruno's honorable intentions here. Bruno loves fighting in these really harsh conditions that really challenge him as a trainer to to do his best, to make sure that he survives. He has to do his absolute best. And in this case, he lures them onto, like, a pair of moving Onix. They're not his Onix, they're wild Onix. But, and he intends not to use his Onix, he intends to use solely his fighting-type Pokemon for this one, in order to make it that much of a challenge for him. But as much of a challenge for for his opponents, that way they're on equal ground. He doesn't care about the Elite Four's agenda. He just wants a good fight. And Lieutenant Surge and Bill, for a moment, put up that good fight, interestingly enough. But they're saved unsurprisingly, by Red, who teams up with Lieutenant Surge, his opponent, again, in the Silph Company battle. And we see Yellow and Blaine come across them, and really, like, Yellow's relief at seeing Red has finally been confirmed, not only to be alive, but to be okay, and, having them found Red. But, of course, they're unable to contact Red because there's a wall, it's sort of a one-way mirror sort of thing, that's preventing them from reaching Red and interfering with the battle, which Bruno specifically put up intentionally, so that no one would interfere with the battle. But yeah, Red has returned, Red's alive, yay, and of course that means that we have a little bit of a problem on our hands, because Pika has been with Yellow for this long, but Pika is Red's Pokemon, so there's a little bit of a clash of interest there. So yeah, Red is alive, Blue and Koga are taking on Agatha, Green and Sabrina, I should say, are taking on Lorelei, Red and Bill and Lieutenant Surge are all taking on Bruno together, so the Elite Four is all occupied. It's just Lance that we have to worry about, and we know that Yellow is definitely going to go up against Lance alongside Blaine and Mewtwo, and we also see a little bit of what battle is going on in the mainland, in the Kanto region, all over the Kanto region. Literally, the Elite Four's armies have attacked every single city in the Kanto region, and the gym leaders, the good gym leaders, Misty, Brock, and Erica, are all like doing their best to fight them off. And it's very overwhelming for them. Not only do they have to fend off the armies in Pewter, Cerulean, and Celadon, they have to fend off the armies in Saffron, in Vermilion, in Fuchsia, all these cities that they're not in charge of, that they have to worry about. Like, the armies are attacking everywhere in the Kanto region. It's an all-out offense, and it's crazy. So much happens in this volume. And, of course, at the end, we got the reveal that Yellow is actually a girl. Again, I knew that already. So, yeah, I wouldn't say it's the best volume. It has some... It has a lot of good moments, definitely. It has a lot of good backstory. It's got a lot of good flashbacks, a lot of... explanations for the behavior of all these characters, the emotional impact between, the emotional turmoil, and the clash between Blue and Agatha, the lack of coordination, well, the fact that Green and Sabrina are being forced to coordinate in this particular instance, and, despite having been enemies previously. The reappearance of Team Rocket in general is really good. And of course, Red returning. All these great stuff that happens in this really jam-packed volume. Not the best, again. It still suffers from that, like, from what I said earlier, there's not a lot of having all these battles taking place at the same time takes away from the focus of each battle and the impact that each battle has, but not as much as it did with, say, Naruto, for instance. It really, the fact that we know these characters already, we've seen them, we've interacted with them already, and we know that they have history with each other, makes it so that these battles do have impact. We do feel their weight. So, yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. I know that the next volume is going to be the last one in the Yellow chapter, and I'm really looking forward to it, because I remember it and as being one of my favorite volumes as a kid, one of my favorite parts of the Yellow chapter. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about that volume. Next time we're going to go into volume 7, so thank you so much for watching. If you like what I do, please check out all my other videos, subscribe if you haven't already, and definitely check out my Naruto vlogs. I haven't read Naruto before. What can I say? So I'm currently on volume 26. Naruto's going up against Sasuke. It's really climactic, really emotionally, I'm really emotionally invested in this. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. And of course check out my other Pokemon Adventures revisits if you haven't already, which I'm assuming you probably have. So, but you never know. You might be here by mistake. It might be, in which case, definitely check out my other Pokemon Revisits videos. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. I totally shook my camera there. I'll see you next time.